And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Still Curtain podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of StillCurtain.com, and joining me, as always, the Still Curtain contributor, Shayne Kubas. Shayne, Aaron Rodgers is at Steelers minicamp. We're going to share all the latest buzz from minicamp going on. We're only 2 days into this as we record this podcast, but we'll talk about the biggest storylines coming out of minicamp, and obviously, Rodgers is at the forefront of that, Shayne. We're also going to talk TJ Watt's hold-in has begun. And then what is Pittsburgh's next big move? Because there are some whispers out there that they could do some wild stuff coming up here.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously reasons for why that might be happening. Once you finally get Aaron Rodgers on board, you want to try to maximize this year, even though we've talked about if that's really realistic or not, but we'll kind of get into that more today.
So Shayne, let's start with Aaron Rodgers here attending minicamp. This was the desired outcome, right? We talked about after he skipped OTAs, we're like, June 10, that is the day you got to show up here because it's time to get the ball rolling. You wanted to start developing that chemistry with your teammates. All that stuff needs to happen. You didn't want to prolong this until training camp or even longer than that. Some whispers out there were saying that even if it took halfway through training camp, the Steelers would still be willing to turn to Aaron Rodgers because he gives them the best option. Thankfully, he showed up in time for mandatory minicamp, and it's called mandatory for a reason, which TJ Watt is not abiding by right now, but we're going to talk about why in just a second. I think you probably already know. But Aaron Rodgers is there. We get our first glimpse of him in that white and yellow practice jersey. Shayne, what are your thoughts so far from anything that he said or anything that you've heard from Rodgers?
Well, first of all, I want to touch on the fact that we talked about this multiple times, that this was when he had to do this, in my opinion, if he wanted to have a chance of working out. And Steelers needed him to be here as well. So it's good that the timing of it worked out where he didn't really miss anything that's crucial in any way. Sure, it would have been nice to have him at OTAs, but there's not a whole lot actually going on in OTAs. It's just kind of everybody getting together, going through some minor stuff. And this is where the workouts start to get more legitimate, where you start kind of putting stuff in place and finding out where guys are at this point in the offseason. So it's really important that he's here for this. As far as stuff he said, kind of what you expected him to say, he loves Pittsburgh, blue collar town, blah, blah, blah. And we know that, about the city and the team, but he said all the right things so far. And we got the news that I was lucky enough to write about his marriage he apparently had during the offseason, which maybe answers another reason he wasn't here earlier. Maybe he wanted to, which fine. Congrats on that, I suppose. But it just a lot of kind of that stuff. We still don't know all the details of, why the holdup and all this stuff, but it does start to kind of makes sense more and more as we kind of get some more information here and there.
Yeah, for sure. Pretty chalk overall. And again, it's hard to glean too much from a performance standpoint. Obviously, you're a day in to minicamp with a 41-year-old quarterback. It doesn't matter that much. It's basically just he's here. That's the big thing, that he's here now. Now we can finally turn the page. And there's no more riding the fence and saying, are we in on this year? Are we in for the future? The Steelers are in. The Steelers are in right now.
Yeah.
And that we're going to talk about some of the moves that might be coming in response to Rodgers officially inking that deal. And I know that you and I, Shayne, have both kind of gone back and forth on this a little bit and said maybe they shouldn't be. But at this point, it's like, what have you got to lose now that you've got a 41-year-old quarterback in the building? Cam Hayward's 36. TJ Watt turns 31. They need to find a way to make it work now. I think that we would all agree that that's where this team is, whether we thought they made the right choice by going this direction or not. This is the direction that they've chosen. So that's where we are right now. Shannon, speaking of TJ Watt, no surprise to see him holding out of mandatory minicamp. Now the team can technically fine him, and the fines go up each day that exceed total of $100,000. That's going to be chump change for a guy that's looking for 40 plus million per year, who's going to top Myles Garrett's numbers. At least he's attempting to. And I understand the holdup here, Shayne. I understand from both sides, because in Watt's mind and in his party, where they're coming from is he's been a more productive player from Garrett since the moment they entered the league back in 2017 in terms of raw statistical production. Watt has all the accolades that Garrett has. And so he wants to be paid. He wants to top that next guy. He wants to be the record setter. He doesn't want to fall short of that. And so I understand where they are coming from. I also understand the hesitation from the Steelers. Now that Garrett jumped, the Browns jumped the gun here and got Garrett's deal done, record-setting contract, $40 million a year. The Steelers are kind of trying to wait this out and see maybe what they can do in terms of contract negotiations. It could get richer potentially if Micah Parsons' deal gets done with the Dallas Cowboys this offseason. But where are you with all of this, Shayne? And I'm sure you're not surprised that Watt is not at minicamp, right?
No, I'm not surprised. And I think it's a smart thing for him. Obviously, you don't want to put yourself in any real risk until you kind of get this sorted out, which is why whatever the Steelers ultimately are going to do with this, I do think they should want to try to get it done as soon as possible. One, because you just want Watt back in the fold. You want him to be getting ready to go. And two, that Micah Parsons deal, we assume is coming at some point soon. And despite the fact that, yes, Garrett's been doing it longer and he's, he got that new contract recently, Parsons is probably going to get more than him because this is just how this works. He's a younger player. He should be an ascending player even still, despite being as productive as he's already been. There's a good chance he tops that $40 million number, at least maybe the guarantees on it, or, however he beats him, he's probably going to beat him in some way, right? Watt's going to still be able to say, like, hey, like, I'm still more productive than either of these guys. Like, and whether you agree with whether he should get paid more or not is really irrelevant. He's going to ask for it. And if the Steelers are committed to having him on the team, they have to decide, okay, are we willing to wait this out and hope that he comes down from that number a little bit? Or do we bite the bullet, give him a 2 or 3 year deal with similar value and hope that he can give us that production for a couple more years before things really teeter off? So.
Yeah, and Shayne, I'm not going to be too hard on anybody that has a bold stance on whatever direction, either pay him now, whatever he wants, or if it's we have to think about the future of the franchise right now, knowing that Watt is going to be 32, 33, 34 years old. Yeah, no, you're good. Knowing that Watt's going to be 32, 33, 34 years old on his next contract, I can see it from both sides. Like if you're really future minded and saying like, this team's not going to do anything right now, let's build for the future. I understand that too. I understand where the hesitation could be coming from. Essentially what it comes down to, Shayne, is the Steelers are going to pay Watt for past production in hopes that he can repeat that production in his 30s. And I just don't know how reasonable that is. But the market is the market, and we know that too. And it doesn't matter Watt's age at this point. What matters is what he's done in the past. This is how guys always get paid, regardless of position. You get paid on what you've done so far, not about what you're about to do in the future.
Most often, yes. Like, especially for guys at this level, right, where there's no proving to be done. There's no ascension to be made potentially. You're not getting paid because, we think you're about to break out or this or that. Like, we know who he is, right? He's shown us that for, nearly a decade now. The problem is ultimately we kind of saw last year where he was still his playmaker self. He still had key sacks and key pressures and stuff like that. But the overall kind of metrics from him and the overall production wasn't as good. Now, it's better than 90% of the rest of the league. But when you're TJ Watt, you should be better than essentially all of the rest of the league production-wise. It's kind of been his MO since he became a full-time starter. So if he plays at that level or less the rest of the way throughout his contract, whatever he signs for, it's technically going to be undervalued because what he's done in the past is so highly valued, right? The amount of production he's had is so good. So it's tough. I understand from pretty much every side of it that, like, realistically, if this deal gets done, it's probably not going to end up being a value, right? Or it's definitely not going to be a value. But the value of having him around still for the next couple of years, and also just not letting a player of his stature leave the city, I know that's really important to really probably both sides, but especially the Steelers side. So.
All right, Shayne, let's move on, and we'll talk about something that just dropped here.
Yeah.
A Steelers rumor, we'll call it.
Yeah.
Now, the guy that goes by Ricky on Twitter, he's got a big following. He's been known to be right before.
Plenty
he's
of times,
kind of like this self-proclaimed NFL insider.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the scoops. What is his handle? Something scoops.
Ricky Scoops or something. I forget what it is. It was very, very funny. People know that from the dog pictures. Like
he's got the dog profile picture there. But he has called some things right before. Now, he's the one that said Aaron Rodgers will be on the Pittsburgh Steelers by training camp. And I think it was even that day that he signed his contract with the Steelers. So it didn't take that long. It happened a lot sooner than that. But for what it's worth, Ricky claims that the Steelers are rumored to be interested in both Jair Alexander and a potential trade for Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey, 7-time Pro Bowler. Both of these guys, good football players. Obviously, Alexander has the health issues that we've talked about, just can't stay on the field.
Yeah.
And Ramsey he's 30 years old now. He's going to turn 31 this season. So he's past his prime years, but maybe can be had for like a 5th round pick or so. Shayne, are you interested to hear this rumor first of all? And does it surprise you? And now, obviously, we know that the Steelers want to get better around Aaron Rodgers, but would you have suspected that they'd be looking at cornerback like this?
Maybe not, because they made the Darius Slay signing already, early in the offseason. Now, granted, neither of these players were really considered to be available at that point in time, especially Alexander, because there was hope that, Packers would figure it out with him or that he'd be traded or whatever. So it's kind of hard to say how that would have gone. But I think it's interesting because, at least, especially for the Ramsey side of things, like that one I would understand more, because I think you can stick him in the slot kind of like overhang type of role where he doesn't have to play outside corner. Or if Darius Slay ends up being, burnt toast at this point in his career, you could move him then to outside corner probably, right? And then have someone else come in and play the slot, whoever that ends up being. So that one makes more sense to me, because I kind of view Alexander as more of a true, outside guy. Like maybe he can move into the slot. I don't know. With his injury stuff, I don't know if you want him playing closer to the line of scrimmage anyway. But I think both make some amount of sense. But I think the Ramsey one would be the one that would make the most sense, just from where the defense is at right now, what they could use.
Yeah, I agree. You don't have as many question marks there. I still trust him. I think that he's going to age well as a corner just because of his profile. He's already a big guy with ball skills, can tackle. And so I think that he would be an awesome fit. It's just like, does that seem like a heck of a luxury trade or what? Like, and he would be an upgrade over Slay. I would venture a guess. Slay's 34 years old, and I just don't trust him. I mean, it's one thing to be a 33-year-old cornerback, which you're already defying father time when you're a 33-year-old cornerback, but you're on the most talented roster in the NFL in Philadelphia last year, where the pressure, they're getting there with a 4-man rush, and you've got talented young cornerbacks playing alongside you who can also alleviate some pressure. And then suddenly go into the Steelers, where you don't necessarily have the same level of talent that Philadelphia has. The rush isn't probably going to get there quite as fast. Obviously, Terrell Austin isn't the most creative defensive coordinator. And so now, if you're 34 years old left on an island, how are you going to look on a new team? I have my questions about that. So I'm not opposed to the idea of a trade. If it costs me a 5th round pick to go out and get a Jalen Ramsey, I still think that you're going to exceed that value. Now, he's playing on a big contract, and so that's something the Steelers have to consider. They do have to spend X amount of cash, obviously, anyway. We assumed a lot of that was going to go into TJ Watt's contract. Let me look at, because I want to check out his contract right here while I've got it. Let's pull this up. Cap number for this year, Jalen Ramsey, $16.6 million. Very manageable. Then it goes up the following 3 years after that, $25 million, 26.8, and then 36 million. But by that time, you can cut. It's going to be save 31.2 of that. So it's not
if it's any team that trades for him is going to rework that deal for sure. Like they're going to move money around. They're going to kind of switch things up with that.
For sure.
That's certainly what will happen. And I think for the Steelers, you might be viewing him as kind of a rental type of situation anywhere, where you move him and or just kind of outright release him if you're able to take that cap hit on. Again, any move for this year or any move they make at this point is probably going to be primarily for this season. There's guys out there you could theoretically try to target that might be valuable past this year. But if we're talking about moves, now that Rodgers is here, we assume many of them are going to be kind of like short-term type of go for it moves. So.
Yeah, you're probably looking at a 2-year window type of moves that we're looking at. And then also like those are large cap numbers. The Steelers could restructure that. They could move some stuff back.
Absolutely.
Give themselves a chance to maximize the window that's in front of them right now. So very interested, to say the least, if this proves to be true, if we hear another report from this, from a reputable source, one of these NFL insiders, then we can say there's probably some truth to this. But as of now, we'll call this a rumor that the Steelers are interested in Jair Alexander and Jalen Ramsey. We'll see if anything comes of this, but not hard to understand that Omar Khan, Andy Weidel could be doing everything in their power to try to maximize the strength of the roster overall, not necessarily just on the offensive side of the ball, but what moves, what potential talents are out there that give you the best chance to upgrade your roster and be a competitive team this year. Obviously, that's the direction this team is going. All right, Shayne, let's talk Steelers mini camp notes. Now, we're not very far into this thing. Obviously, we gleaned some stuff from OTAs. The stuff that happens on the field, not that noticeable. It's not that notable, I should say, when you are in shorts and not pads. Like it just doesn't matter that much. And so we're talking about the other stuff here. We're talking about quotes from coaches and players, things that have a little bit more depth to them that we can kind of spin forward and say, what does this mean for the team? And so the first thing that I wanted to discuss, Shayne, in terms of Steelers minicamp notes, is that Derek Harmon is already being named as the starter opposite Cam Hayward. He's going to play that left defensive end role in that 3-4 base defense. And obviously, nickel defense is such a huge part of the game. The Steelers are going to be in sub package a ton. And so they can be altering out. And it'll be interesting to see where he slides along the line. But he's at least going to be the starter alongside Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton.
Yeah, and this just it makes so much sense. And I'm glad the Steelers are doing this, because when we talked about most important Steelers for 2025, most impactful type of thing we did last time, I left Harmon off because I wasn't sure if I could trust that they'd actually play him enough early on for him to kind of slide into that mix. But I do think if they're already naming him a starter, if the defensive line coach Urban already said that he's going to be a starter, I don't see any reason why he won't be and won't play a lot, this season. And I think there's room for him and Benton and obviously Hayward too. Like, all of them can play a lot of snaps in this defense. There's going to be a lot of situations where they can do that. But it's just really good to hear that they already view him the way that they do, because I felt like he was ready to play out the gate. Now, I know I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect, but I felt like he should get a lot of playing time right out the gate. He can give them legitimate juice in the pass rush that, outside of honestly Cam last year, like Benton had his moments, but he kind of was pigeonholed into a weird role, still is possibly. We'll talk about that, where he's not going to be able to do as much consistently there. So hopefully we'll get more out of Harmon with the pass rush.
And Shayne, I'm hoping this is because they recognize that Harmon's a talented player. I hope it's not just because there's a lack of depth there. Like, it makes me wonder, had Ogunjobi stuck around for this season, would they have made the same declaration? Probably not, even knowing that before Harmon plays a snap, he's going to be a better player than Ogunjobi at this stage of his career.
Yeah.
Regardless of why, it's good to know that he is going to begin the season as a starter. And that means that hopefully by the end of the season, the same opportunity that wasn't afforded to Justin Fields last year, where you would have hoped that he would have improved and been the player you wanted to be by the end of the year, Harmon's going to get a chance to be that, because he's going to begin the year as a starter. And then hopefully by the end of the season, if the Steelers are able to get into the playoffs, he will already have starting experience under his belt. He can hopefully the arrow will be pointed up by that point. And so, Shayne, I want to transition from one good decision on the defensive line to a couple of questionable decisions on the defensive line. And so what we know now from Coach Carl Dunbar, defensive line coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, is that Keanu Benton will stick at nose tackle for the third straight year. And interestingly, that is not where Y.A. Black is playing. Y.A. Black is playing 3-4 defensive end. He's playing the 4-eye position, which is lined up over the offensive tackle right now. Make it make sense, Shayne. Like, I understand if you want to keep Benton as your nose tackle at this point because you drafted Harmon, you think he's a better fit for that 3 to 5 technique role. I understand that, but can we at least say that we can move him around in sub packs? Can we do something else? Because that's not his skill set. I thoroughly believe, even I know that he played nose even going back to Wisconsin, but I know that his skill set is best suited to be like a 3 technique, and he's just not used that way. So let's start with that one. What do you make of Benton playing nose for the third straight year?
It's just a waste of time. We know this. This isn't one of those things where it's like, oh, well, we could use him elsewhere, but he's just been too good at nose tackle. It's like, no, he's not a nose tackle. He just isn't. This isn't a conversation of oh, well, he can do so many things. It's like, no, he's a 3 tech. This is a penetrating interior defensive lineman. He wants to get up the field, use his quickness to make plays both as in the run game, ideally, and in the passing game. He doesn't really do that as much as you'd want him to, because he is consistently asked to play nose tackle. It's not that he's so bad at the role that he shouldn't be on the field necessarily, but it's clearly not what he's best at. He's not this run plugging, hold his gap, 2-gapping kind of guy. He just isn't. And that's okay, except that they keep asking him to be that. And then they draft a guy who's who apparently right now is 340 pounds or whatever he was supposed to be. And they're like, yeah, you're 4-eye. It's like, no. that you're not like, this isn't like, I forget what it was, I think it was Red Bryant for the Seahawks who they would do this with, who was like 350 pounds back in the day. But they're like, we're not running that kind of defense. Like that's not how we do this. Like you have 3 guys who should be playing as that true interior, like pass rusher / like kind of playmaking run defenders. And then you draft a guy who can maybe just fill that nose tackle role. Instead, they're like, no, we're just going to use him as like a regular interior defensive lineman. It's like, for what reason? There's no reason on tape to do that. There just isn't. Like you could sit there and try to convince me. And these are NFL coaches. Like you could say I'm wrong about this. I just don't think I am. Like this is what it comes down to.
And Shayne, having experience at nose tackle isn't automatically going to turn you into one. It's not automatically what you're going to become. And here's the biggest issue with Benton is he's asked to take on double team blocks. He's asked to hold up and be stout against the run. That's the biggest weakness of his game right now. Like he can get washed away in the rush in the rushing attack. And so that's the problem is when you look at his skill set, you watch the guy on tape, it's clear to see that he's got burst off the line. He's bendy and nimble and fluid for an interior pass rusher. That's where he wins. He wins in knifing into the backfield. He doesn't win as being in this uber stout run defender and holding up in double team blocks against guards and centers. Like that's not him. And so I understand that now maybe you've got the dilemma where it's like, well, then nobody is. Well, Cam could play it for sure because the guy, if you wanted him to be that just in base, you could do that. Obviously that there's a lot of finagling that goes into that, but I do think that Benton will play out of position for the 3rd year in a row, at least in sub package, get him involved in what he does best because that's where he needs to be. Transitioning Shayne to YA Black. I mean, Teresa Varley of Steelers.com reported that YA Black was 352 pounds, showed up at 352 pounds from 330 at his Iowa Pro Day. 352 is enormous, but even when he was playing lighter than that, or at least we assume he was playing lighter than that this past year at Iowa, you go and put on his tape. Where is he the weakest, Shayne? It's moving laterally and trying to make plays. Where is he the strongest? It's the opposite of Benton. He can take on double teams. He's an immovable player at the line of scrimmage. You're not going to see him get pushed off the ball, hardly ever. He is incredibly strong. He's just not very mobile. And so it makes you question, like, and knowing that when you're in base or even when you're in sub package, playing 3 through 5 technique, you have to have the lateral quickness and mobility to move out in space. He just doesn't have that. You watch his game and you see this guy fits the definition of a nose tackle. I hate to think that Dunbar and the coaching staff, Tara Lawson, Mike Tomlin, are thinking this way, Shayne, but do they see a guy that is 6'6" with long arms and automatically pigeonhole him into being, well, you are our 3-4 base end type of player? Please tell me they don't do that. Please tell me that they're wiser than that when it comes to player evaluation.
It appears not. And realistically, too, the other problem I have with this whole thing, like you said, if he showed up according to reports at 352, right? He better be playing nose tackle, or I'm going to start being like, should I be concerned about his weight? Like, should I be concerned about his workout? Like, I don't want to put that on somebody. But if they are going to play him as a 3-4 base end, you can't weigh 352 pounds. And dude, I'm sorry, you just can't do that unless you're a freak of freaks, which unfortunately he's not. And that's part of the issue. You can't do that. Like, that's just not how that works. So he's either got to come down weight, which in my opinion would be bad for him because he's ultimately probably going to still be a nose tackle, whether they want him to be or not. Or you have to start wondering if he's going to be able to hold up at that position at all because it's really hard to do that at that weight. Again, unless you're a freak, which he's not. So
no, he doesn't move like Tavondre Sweat or anything. No. Film. Like that's just not his game at all. No, so I did give my player comps for each of Steelers' top 5 picks. If you want to go check those out on stillcurtain.com. And Shayne, low end, like I used a comp that fans are familiar with. I could have reached for something else that maybe they wouldn't have known as well. But there are some similarities with the Dan McCullers thing, even size-wise now. If he is 352 pounds and he's tall and long, but he doesn't have great lateral mobility. Now, McCullers lasted a little while in the NFL because he was pretty stout. You could use him for goal line. You could use him for short yardage. That's how YA Black should be used, honestly. He shouldn't be used as a base 3-4 end. He's just not that athlete. So some questionable decisions, to say the least, on personnel decisions on the defensive line. Let us know your thoughts. Drop it in the chat here if you agree, disagree with us, what we just talked about here. Shayne, I want to transition to our next Steelers minicamp note, and that is that it appears Calvin Austin is in the driver's seat for the wide receiver 2 job. This is coming directly from wide receivers coach Zach Azzanni, who said, I think that 2 spot is Calvin's right now. That doesn't mean that it's going to be his all season long, but he really likes Calvin Austin. He's voiced that. He praised the pudding out of Austin last offseason as well. He really likes this guy's work ethic. What do you think? What do you make of this whole situation, Shayne? Is this, are we overblowing this whole wide receiver 2 thing? Is this going to even change by week 1?
Maybe. I think the ultimate thing right now is that Roman Wilson has to take this position. I think he's the only one who I think really can right now is the thing. And I think saying that Calvin Austin is the number 2 receiver right now is not like this earth-shattering thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, who else is other than Roman Wilson maybe? And he played 5 snaps last year. So all we can go off of is the small amount of practice time we've had. So from that perspective, it's like, yeah, he's the receiver 2 because who else is? But you hope for Roman Wilson's sake that he can kind of be that de facto number 2 receiver, at least the second most targeted wide receiver outside of DK Metcalf. Now, in terms of like where they play on the field and role and blah, 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 whatever, you could harp on that all day. But in terms of who this like team's go-to receiver after Metcalf is, you want it to be Wilson between the draft capital and the fact he's younger, more you can tap into there. We kind of know, I think, what Austin is, which is a very useful player, but not a true like starting caliber, like number 2 wide receiver. So I still hope he gets involved plenty and can be one of those gadgety guys and also still kind of give you the deep threat stuff. But yeah, you don't want him, in my opinion, to ultimately end up as this receiver 2. So
yeah, you nailed it, Shayne. And if we're putting together a rooting guide right now, every Steelers fan should be rooting for Roman Wilson to take the wide receiver 2 job from Calvin Austin. It's not that I don't like the guy.
Right.
It's just when you're going into year 4 and you are 5'7" 3/4", which you're already going to have, you will have limitations at that size. We've seen some splash plays from him. We've seen some good stuff, but the chances of you suddenly having like this monstrous breakout campaign in year 4 is very slim, especially when you consider the limitations Austin already has just from his profile. On the other hand, Roman Wilson is younger. He also tested as a good athlete. He's less proven, and so you hope that he can have a steeper curve in terms of developmental curve in the NFL. And he is bigger. He's 5'10" 3/4". And so I know it seems minuscule, but you look at the difference. There's a lot of guys that can turn out when you're just under 5'11". There are very, very few guys in the NFL that can turn out as legitimate wide receiver 2 threats when you're under 5'8". And so that's the difference. For me, that's where I'm coming from right now. Wilson is the guy that has more years left on his rookie contract, and he's a guy that you would assume can be here for much longer and have more potential as a wide receiver too. So we'll see how this thing shakes up. But it does sound like Austin is firmly in the driver's seat for the wide receiver 2 position. As of right now, this could obviously change, and we're not even to training camp yet, so I wouldn't make too much of it. But Azzanni clearly feels strongly about Calvin Austin. All right, Shayne, let's move on and let's talk about Rodgers giving a tight end, NFL tight end player comp for Darnell Washington. He kind of subtly said this when talking about Washington in his media session at Steelers minicamp, and he compared Washington to the long time NFL tight end Mercedes Lewis, who just played at 40 years old for the Chicago Bears last season. Had a heck of a career, Shayne, and this was my high-end player comp that I gave to Darnell Washington shortly right after he was drafted in 2023. It's very, very easy to draw the comps from a skill set and size profile. Both guys are the 6'7", 280-ish tight ends who excel as the blocking types. Rodgers obviously is liking his new gadget. Impossible to miss there on that team. Just such a big profile. Is that praise too high, Shayne? And what are your expectations for Washington this year with the Steelers?
I don't think it's too high. I mean, Mercedes Lewis, as long as he's played, he's rarely been considered like a truly great player at any point. There's a couple of times, probably early in his career when he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
One Pro Bowl season, I think he had 700 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So like if you hope that he can produce at the level that a Mercedes Lewis has produced, even being technically the tight end too for this team. But he does fit a lot of the same characteristics. Like he is a bigger body guy. Obviously, we know that he's a great blocker. I do wonder a little bit like what the ultimate upside is as a receiver, because we saw him get used a little bit more last year, but it was inconsistent. Still, like he's a very niche receiving threat, right? Like it's in the red zone. Ideally, you'd want maybe Rodgers could tap into that more, get him on the move, let him run, around and over and jump over people and everything else. He loves doing that. Like he's definitely useful. I do just wonder like how much more they can get out of him as a receiver, and even if they don't, I mean his blocking by itself, especially last year, is just so valuable that I think extending him would be very smart and trying to keep him on this team long term. So,
yeah, 100%. I'm excited to see what could come of that. And Shayne, I want to drop a chat in here too from Corey Beavers. This is funny, Shayne. I don't know if I've told you this before, but the high school that I went to, the Corey Beavers. We were the Corey. I'm from Corey, and our mascot was the Beavers. So, is that your real name? I want to know that. Type that in the chat. Doesn't our coaching staff typically draft for talent and not fit? That's why a lot of our players have left and succeeded elsewhere. He talks about Kendrick Green, I'm assuming, and Chukwueze Okorafor, to name a couple. Kendrick Green, I would have stayed away from anyway. I think just because he would have been a 6'1" and change guard and very light in the pants that way too. I wasn't a big fan of his game, but you're right. I mean, we talked about, we've already named a few of those guys. DeMarvin Leal's another one who the Steelers think that he is a edge rusher. Like the guy was theoretically big enough where you could have made him into a 3 technique. He's fluid, he's bendy, he's not fast. And when you make him an edge, he's obviously a very poor athlete compared to edges around the NFL. Can you think of any other examples off the top of your head, Shayne?
I mean, it's tough because I generally kind of agree that this coaching staff sometimes is just like, we're going to take a good player and we'll figure it out. And then they don't really do that. Or like they try something and then it's clearly the wrong thing. And then they're like, we'll just keep doing it. It's weird. Right. And I see, you are correct that, it is his name. But no, I think it's very interesting to talk about this type of thing because when you look at like the examples he gave, I would argue that they weren't successful elsewhere. I mean, Kendrick had a little bit of run with the Texans where he looked okay. Kendrick Green, that is, but like Okorafor, not really done anything. Like those players were just like.
Well, Shayne, I'll give you another one. Javon Hargrave played nose tackle for the Steelers, and he was a good football player. He was definitely a good football player.
He was still good too,
but then he goes and he's better with the Eagles when they actually have him playing a proper role for him. So there has been cases of that.
That just makes me think too. Like I don't even want to talk about it, but like, could you imagine Keanu Benton on the Eagles right now?
Yeah, I think he'd be phenomenal.
I hate it, but he'd probably be better. It sucks.
There is too much of that goes on. And the other thing that they do that Shayne, that is just a pet peeve of Shayne and I, is when they value veteran seniority over the clearly better, more talented player. Like I know that Joey Porter's had his ups and downs. They played Levi Wallace until the bye week, until they switched to Joey Porter. And that kind of stuff just happens too often with this team. They've got to stop. They got to kind of get with the times and what everybody else is doing. You've got a valuable rookie contract here. You're taking these guys first, second round, like they should be contributors right away on your football team, and they have not operated with that mentality. Seems like they might now with Derek Harmon, but in the past they just haven't done this. And so obviously there's the Broderick Jones thing, playing right tackle. His first 2 seasons, he has 1 game of left tackle under his belt entering year 3, which is not ideal for a guy that it's raw as he is. So absolutely. Yeah. Keep them coming in the chats. If you guys have any other questions, drop them in here for us. We'd like to kick these discussions off like this. Shayne, one more thing I wanted to mention here in terms of Steelers minicamp notes. As of we are into day 2 of minicamp right now. It is Arthur Smith hints at the higher passing volume this year. So kudos for him to saying that. But this shouldn't come as a big surprise, but you like to get the endorsement from the offensive coordinator, who has been the heaviest run coordinator in the league, essentially, since calling the shots back in 2019 as the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. Now Arthur Smith just said, and this was just today before we started the pod, we didn't bring Aaron Rodgers in here and DK Metcalf for all the money that they got to run the wishbone. So he is not oblivious to the fact that they just went and got two huge profile players to run this offense. It's not going to be just the Arthur Smith offense that we're used to seeing. This is going to be partly the Aaron Rodgers offense. This is going to be a more high volume passing than I think probably in any season that we've seen, at least since Ben in 2021, right?
Yeah, I think, first of all, really good quote. Appreciate that's a pretty good line
for
him to not run the wishbone. Yeah. Ultimately, this is pretty simple. Like, yes, that this is going to be the case. Like, it's good to hear, like you said. Like, naturally, though, you're going to throw the ball a little bit more than last year when you're dealing with a guy who likes to throw the ball around the yard. And Aaron Rodgers, I do think it's going to be less passing centric than especially the Jets were last year. But really, a lot of Rodgers' offenses, really, like outside maybe like the later Matt LaFleur years with him, where they were really running the ball a lot. But it does make sense they're going to have a higher passing volume. I think that is ultimately what they have to do for this offense to kind of be better than what they got out of it last year. I talked about this with Josh when we kind of broke everything with him signing whenever that happened on Monday. But realistically, if they don't throw the ball pretty often, what's the point in bringing in a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, right? Yeah. Like that's also like that's what he's talking about. Like why do you go get DK? Why do you go get Aaron Rodgers? Now, what I want them to do, ideally, to kind of make this a little bit balanced, is I think the quick game, especially like the passing game, first and second down, like quick game stuff, should run through Aaron Rodgers. Like he should kind of handle a lot of the calls for that, like trying to get them in and out of plays in that regard. And then the third down play action and the run game stuff should definitely be Arthur Smith's kind of bread and butter. That's where he should be focusing a lot of his effort, play calling, and things like that. I think if you kind of bring those two together, you could get the best version of what this offense could look like in 2025.
I agree, Shayne. And I think we've seen examples of this around the NFL where you can have a really good offense predicated around the rushing attack, but oftentimes when it matters most, or if you have to play from behind, you just don't have the firepower because your team isn't built to do that. I think the 49ers have been a good example of that, where they've been a tremendously talented football team, but then in situations where you get behind, they're just not good offensively anymore. And so you like to have a higher volume passing offense for that reason alone, so that you can hang with the big dogs. Look at the quarterbacks in the AFC. Obviously, I mean, you're dealing with the cream of the crop here. And so you have to be able to at least hang with those guys. You can't expect to just pound the football and to be in every single contest, because once you get in the playoffs, it's not going to work that way. So kudos to Arthur Smith. Great quote, like you said. But thankfully, he's recognizing this very early in the process that, we are going to pass more than we have. And for good reason. We've got Aaron Rodgers, albeit his age and all, and DK Metcalf, who has been a perennial 1,000-yard receiver. Like, they can make it work. The other thing that we should probably talk about real quick here, Shayne, we don't have this in our notes, but it was good that Aaron Rodgers and Metcalf have been working out all along. That's probably a telltale sign, obviously, that Rodgers was going to ultimately sign with the Steelers, the fact that they were working out this summer. But developing that chemistry, because there's cases to be made where it's like, all right, hindsight being what it is, should they have gone and tried to pull Devontae Adams away from the Rams and get him to the Steelers? Like, they've already got that connection, that chemistry. Now, Metcalf's a very different type of player than Rodgers has succeeded with in the past, whether it was a Jordy Nelson or a Devontae Adams, like precise pinpoint route runners, sideline guys, know exactly where you're going to be. But hopefully, getting this work together very early in the process, they can develop that chemistry for this year.
Yeah, because it's going to be most important for those two to get on the same page, because obviously the rest of the guys have to do as well. Like Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin have to know where to be. Pat Freiermuth has to be able to be good at, kind of finding soft spots and zones, especially, I think, and kind of giving him a good target. But if him and Metcalf can't link up, then the season is lost on offense. Like, that's just what it comes down to. You put your eggs in his basket, both of theirs. Those two have to work well together. And if they don't, you're just not going to have a good offense. You're just not. Like, that's what it comes down to. There is no one else I think you can funnel the offense through at all. And I still have my reservations about whether they can do that with DK, but I think he obviously provides them the best chance of doing that and getting chunk plays and things like that. So that has to work out between those two.
Yeah, and I think the questions are fair. I mean, fluidity in the quickness in and out of his breaks is not really Metcalf's forte. Like that's not where he excels.
No.
That's where Rodgers excels, though. He likes timing and preciseness. And so hopefully at least working together is going to work towards that. And obviously, Rodgers is not oblivious to know that this is by far and away his number one option in the passing game this year. Maybe doesn't even know who is number two yet. It's going to be
I'm not sure
maybe Roman Wilson. Like we just don't know. So, but he has one guy. He needs to at least have that one guy he can go to, like he's had over the years when he transitioned straight from Jordy Nelson to Devontae Adams, and then has had Adams essentially ever since. I mean, he ruptured his Achilles in 2022, didn't have it, and then Adams came the next season halfway through at the trade deadline. So he's always had that guy. We'll see if he gets it in Metcalf. All right, if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube. We appreciate all of your support. Leave us a comment, get the chat going here. And then at the end of the show, make sure you drop a comment, hit the like and subscribe button. We would appreciate all of that. That's going to help us bring you more content from this channel. All right, Shayne, one more thing I wanted to discuss today, and that's what's next for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've talked about some of the rumors that are out there right now. I want to ask you what you would do, and then we'll talk about what we think this team is going to do. We've already agreed, right, that now that you've got an old quarterback here, this is a 1-year window we're probably looking at, unless things go swimmingly well, and maybe they would sign him for 1 more year, or maybe he just up and retires. Like, the guy's old. There's Tom Brady's done it, and he's one of the exceptionally few quarterbacks to ever last this long to begin with. And so knowing that Hayward is nearing the end, knowing that Watt is nearing the final years of his prime, like, you traded for a 27, 28-year-old DK Metcalf, who you gave a big contract to, but it's like the window is now. You made it clear the time to pounce is now. And so, Shayne, it's a hard line because in one sense, you have all this draft capital for next year. A first, a second, 3/3, 2/4, 2/5, 2/6. Like, you're loaded. You are loaded draft capital. Are you willing to dig into that? The first question I would ask you is, are you willing to dig into future draft capital to maximize this window to its fullest potential, knowing that maybe the chances still aren't very good, or would you be more apt to say, let's take minimal swings now, and that way we can preserve all this for our next quarterback?
I think it's just really difficult because at the end of the day, any move they make that's out there is probably not going to raise the ceiling enough to make this, like, especially a Super Bowl contending team, but even realistically, like a division winning contending team, like a division winning team, in my opinion. Now, the Steelers probably can't operate that way, right? Like, they have to view this as like, we need to make this the best roster we can, because especially if we do end up going the rookie quarterback route next year and we do have to give up a ton of assets to make that happen, we're putting ourselves in a position where this might be the last year we can contend with the core we have, especially on defense, right? Because there's no guarantee that rookie quarterback is, one, going to be good, and two, if he is good, how good is he going to be in the first 2 years or so? Because after that, you're probably done with this core, with TJ and Cam, all those guys. So this is probably their last best shot outside of a Jaden Daniels-esque rookie season from a quarterback in 2026. What you can do is the issue, because you look at it, we talked about the Jalen Ramsey and Jair Alexander situation. Mm-hmm. Getting one of those guys does help your defense, which should take some pressure off the offense. Like, you might be able to do more good by attacking the defense and trying to make that a truly elite unit than you would be trying to make the offense a slightly better unit than it is right now, right? Like, that might be the actual better way to go about it. If they are going to go offensively, I think you call up Green Bay and be like, hey, how much for name receiver here? Because you have 12 of them. I would probably go for a guy like Dobbs because he has experience with Rodgers and kind of fits that, like, sideline, like, kind of not go ball, but kind of that back shoulder type kind of mold for him. I think he could do some of that stuff. One name I keep thinking about, because they were talking about him last year a lot. We talked about him. I don't know if they're willing to move him because he was so good for them last year, but they might need to, because he is going to be an unrestricted free agent, I think, after this year or next year. I have to double check his contract. Cortland Sutton would be really good for this receiving room from the Broncos. I think he'd be an awesome get if you could go target him. I don't know what he would cost again, or if the Broncos want to move him, considering they were pretty good last year. They might want to try to build on that this year. But those are some names I would throw out as like, especially if the offense that I'd be looking at trying to go get.
Yeah, Sutton's interesting because he's got that same kind of profile, a little bit bigger body than Romeo Doubs, though. He can do a lot of the back shoulder stuff. It gives you another one of those receivers. He has a $20.2 million cap charge this year, and he is entering the last year of his contract. The next 3 years are void. So maybe they would be willing to move on. The Denver's got a young roster overall. They might be ready to turn the page. Do you want to take away a weapon from your young quarterback, though?
That's the issue.
That's the question. I don't know if they'd want to do that to Bo Nix, but worth looking into. And Shayne, I would almost go the other way. I know that the Steelers want to get back to having that elite defense that matters so much. They've had the most expensive defense for how many years in a row now, and you still haven't been able to get over the top. Now, maybe with another piece or two, you could do that. But I really want to, for the first time in what seems like forever, like 2017, like maximize the weapons around your quarterback, and one who is a Hall of Fame level player, might not be the same player anymore, but I'm at least going to give him every opportunity to prove himself that he still has a year left in the tank. I think if the Steelers are to trade for a weapon, I'd rather do it on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I know that trading for like a Terry McLaurin, out of the question. You're not getting that guy. They're not giving him up. And the Steelers are probably very, very unlikely, Shayne. I can't see them, based on history, trading for a guy that's already on an enormous contract, like the 25+ million. Like, you're not getting that guy, because I can't see this team spending 55, 60 million between two wide receivers. It's just something that would be completely out of character for them.
It's part of why Pickens ain't here anymore.
Probably why. Trading for a receiver on a rookie deal, though, is something. Maybe you can get a Chris Olave. Maybe the Saints are just trying to get as much draft capital. They know that they're going to need a quarterback, probably, even though they just took Tyler Shuck in the second round. They need to rebuild their whole roster. They're in financial disarray. Like, maybe something like that you would be able to pull off, and that would be intriguing. Concussion history and all. Like, you're able to get a Chris Olave for a 1 year thing, essentially. And now maybe you would give him a contract extension. I don't know. That's scary. You got more concussions than Tua. But whatever maximizes your window for this year, I would at least understand it. Shayne, I can tell you who's not worried about the future. It's Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin will not give a care in the world about 2026 or 2027. We don't know how much longer he's going to last. Maybe it's 5 years. Maybe it's one. Like, I don't know. But he is focused on the here and now. That's how he's always been. And so the Steelers are going to try to add talent. I have absolutely no question about that. Shayne, would you put over or under 1.5 trades for the Steelers between now and the start of training camp?
I'll go under. I think there's going to be one trade of some kind. I don't think there's two. I think they pick a direction probably and go. So maybe that's they do trade for an a Ramsey and someone like that, or another defender, and then they go sign a free agent receiver. Like, maybe it's still Gabe Davis, maybe it's an Amari Cooper or something like that. Like, maybe they do that, or vice versa. They trade for a receiver, and then maybe they still add something defensively if there's something out there. So I think two is probably a lot. I know Khan has definitely been wheeling and dealing for the last couple of years, so it wouldn't be that shocking to see it. But I think we've probably seen the majority of the trade moves we'll see, and maybe just one more somewhere.
I would go under as well, because again, you're talking about 2+ trades. That's a bold prediction. Now, I will say I will not be surprised by it if it happens.
Not really.
Team has inquired about Jonnu Smith, who we've talked about on here. They've talked to Kyle Pitts, who we've talked about on here. Now they're looking at trading for a defensive back potentially in Jalen Ramsey, if that rumor proves to be, if that holds any weight at all. But there are positions where they could improve. And we haven't even talked about wide receiver too, which who knows? I'm sure they've called around to at least ask what wide receivers are out there. They're obviously open to adding a skilled player of any type, and the fact that they're talking to tight ends right now.
Yeah.
But I fully expect this team to make one or two significant roster moves before the start of training camp. I think that would be the deadline that I would set, where they would want to have that core around each other already. Maybe one comes on offense, maybe one comes on defense. Like, I don't think that is that far-fetched to believe that the Steelers will make those type of moves. Anything else you wanted to throw out there, Shayne, in terms of what predictions you have, what the Steelers are going to do and how they're going to add more talent?
I just know that if they don't do anything else, what a strange offseason.
Yeah.
It's already kind of strange to me in some ways. We talked about it. But if they don't do anything else now that he's on board officially, that would be very strange to me. Like, I'm not even necessarily going to be that upset about it, depending on what they do or don't do, but just confused more than anything else.
Yeah, and Shayne, we talk about the NFL is all about windows. The Rams a few years back were able to open up a window by trading for Matt Stafford when they had some legendary players on the roster. You had Andrew Whitworth, you had Aaron Donald. Like, those are the type of moves that you make when you're in a window. If the Steelers firmly believe they're in a window, they should be making those moves. Now, I am skeptical of that. You know how I feel. Even with the Rodgers addition, it's like, what chance do they really stand in the AFC still? I like to keep the draft capital. I know ultimately, Shayne, you and I would both agree that the biggest thing that matters more than winning a singular playoff game this year is finding your next future franchise quarterback. Like, nothing's going to work right until you do. So that's still where I am overall. But I also understand, I would understand the sentiment. Like, if you are trying to win now with Aaron Rodgers and in aging TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, I get what you're doing at least. And maybe it'll come with something and maybe it won't. But they can't have their feet in both doorways. You got to pick a direction and go. That's where we are. All right. We go live on this show every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Also check out Josh Yorish's show live on Mondays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you for joining us on the show today. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Steel Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on YouTube or ask Alexa to play the Steel Curtain Steelers podcast. And don't forget to check out our written content on steelcurtain.com. If you liked today's show, please leave us a like and a comment down below. Please make sure you're subscribed. Tell your friends. We want to bring you as much content as possible. And thanks again for listening to the Steel Curtain podcast.